this is Wallace Levin bringing you San Francisco Veterans Report. We thank you for watching. The purpose of the program is to bring before the public items and programs pertaining to veterans. And this is a public service project of American Legion C.C. Thomas, Post 244, as a public service. It's also sponsored by the Mayor's Memorial Day Citizens Committee that brings together a lot of groups to put on Memorial Day. But today we're going to have the opportunity to interview a filmmaker, Anton Sattler, who produced a documentary film pertaining to the Chosan Reservoir. It's called Chosan, one of the great battles of the Korean War and one of the historic battles that are taught in all Marine facilities when they train new recruits. The Korean War is known as the Forgotten War, but really it is forgotten, but it was a great victory. And one of the great battles was in the first year. We had basically won the war. We went up to the Chosan Reservoir, and this is the interview with Anton Sattler about his film. Some people say that it wasn't a victory, but it really was, because we kept South Korea free, and it's one of the most prosperous countries in the world today. But getting to this film, could you tell us, what motivated you to do this, do this film on the Korean War?
Well, I served 6 years active duty as a Marine infantry officer, and when you go through boot camp or OCS, they teach you 3 battles to teach you what it means to be a Marine, and it's Iwo Jima from World War I, Iwo Jima from World War II, Bellawood from World War I, and Chosin from Korea. And the gentlemen from World War I they're gone now. Iwo Jima has been well covered, and nobody had ever done anything on Chosin. It's been 60 years and nobody's ever made a documentary. After I got off active duty, myself and my business partner Brian Iglesias started a company, and we wanted to make our first film really mean something. And we realized, well, nobody's done a documentary on Chosin. So we cashed in our life insurance policies and our retirement accounts and put it all on the line. We jumped in a van and traveled the country for 8 months and interviewed 185 veterans of the Chosin campaign. 20 of them are featured in the film.
Just the film, it has interviews, and you have shots of action in Korea. What's sort of the genesis of how the film runs from beginning to end?
Well, it does include interviews, like you said, and we also used stock footage, which we dug up from the National Archives. We spent about 300 hours in the National Archives digging through piles and piles, literally thousands of index cards that describe what was on the reels on the shelves in the archives. And we managed to dig up about 6 hours of archival footage from Chosin and Korea, some of which has never been seen before, that they only had master copies, which means that nobody ever requested to look at it in the library, or they never requested to have copies made. So we were the first people in 60 years to see that footage, and now we're bringing it to the American public. The other portion, a lot of the photos came from the veterans themselves. So again, they're very rare photographs because they were provided by the men we interviewed. So if you don't know them personally, or you haven't sat in a living room and spoken with them, you would have never seen these photos. And the third source, there's a movie called Retreat Hell that was made in 1951. It's the only other film about this battle. It's a feature film, narrative film. And we used about a minute of that. We licensed the material from Paramount because it was so cold there, it's 40 degrees below zero. Celluloid wouldn't actually feed into the cameras because it would snap. On top of that, the fighting was so brutal that if you were picking up a camera instead of a rifle, you were probably out of your mind. So we had to use the footage from that feature film, Retreat Hell, to help represent what actually occurred on the battle.
I wanted to, how long does the film run?
It's feature length, 86 minutes from beginning to end, and it is actually playing in New York City right now at the Village East. It opens at the Langley Sunset 5 on Friday, September 16th, and it'll be there for 1 week, which will actually qualify us to submit for an Academy Award for Best Documentary. We're a big underdog, and it's a long shot, but you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. And you know, we're just really hoping that we can get the story out to the American public and get them to realize what an important part of our history the Korean War was.
Well, there's hundreds of films on World War II, but and probably there's a lot on Vietnam and a lot of other things, but there's very few films on the Korean War. And what you said was there's no other film on the Chosan invasion.
Correct.
And how would someone order a copy of this film to do that?
In Marine Corps PXs, so if you live on or near base, you can pick it up there. We also have it on the internet at frozenchosin.com. That's FROZENCHOSIN, and it's $24.99 with shipping and handling. Or if you want to host a screening actually in your hometown, we host what we call Forgotten Victory screenings to help honor the 60th anniversary of the Korean War. So if you go to our website, you can actually contact us and request to have a screening in your hometown that you would host. And if Brian and I are able, we'll come out, do a Q&A, and honor the Korean War veterans in your area.
Well, that's great, and we wish you the best of luck on this film. And it's an important part of history, and they say the Korean War is the forgotten war. And as far as the filmmakers go, I think that confirms that fact. Now we're going to show you some previews of this great film, and it would be great if it did win an Academy Award. I would love to see that. But now we're going to show you some previews, some shots from the film.
The papers were terrified that all the forces in North Korea would be lost. The enemy, the Chinese, were everywhere. And their plan was, actually it was very similar to what MacArthur's plan was, and that was to cut us off from the supply, cut us off from the sea. And by doing that, they would surround us and then annihilate us. But they literally surrounded the 1st Marine Division.
Each 2 men got a case of grenades, extra ammunition. A lieutenant came down, talking to each one individually and shaking hands as though it was going to be our last fight, you know. It was going to be, and it was. They hit us harder. Now they knew that after us there was nothing between us and the road. So they came up, flares went up. Mortars guys set up flares, and we could see them. I mean, there was just a horde of them coming at us.
There was hundreds of them down in this ravine, about 50 yards away, and we were machine gunning the hell out of them. Our machine gunner, this young kid, he had the tripod up, and I mean, the belt was flying, and he was just gunning away. And I was standing right there, my big moment of glory. I was standing up there looking at 1,000 damn men, just going, oh my God, we're in it. Oh, I mean, just what could you do? And it didn't make a dent in them whatsoever. I mean, you knew every time you fired your rifle, you're killing somebody, but it certainly wasn't stopping anybody.
I was up on the gun, was sitting up, and it was a little embankment, so the guy had to come up. And when he came forward, I shoved my K-bar straight through, and it came out the back of his neck. When I shoved my bayonet into him, he naturally squirted blood all over me. And God damn, that blood, I mean, it burned my eyes. So I was getting hands full of snow trying to wash out my eyes.
And they had came up in front of us, and they were throwing grenades. And the grenade bounced off my helmet, killed the guy on my left, and wounded my buddy. Then things started to get hairy, and we turned around, and they were right behind us. And my sleeping bag was there, and then we killed 8 of them right on top of my sleeping bag.
When I got blown out of the hole the last time,
I'm laying on the ground, and I thought, well, I better get back. And this was just like seconds, you know. And I looked over and I thought, how then one of our Marines has lost a leg. But, you know, you get used to seeing arms and legs and body parts and bodies laying around, so you don't think too much of it in that. So I'm getting up, was going to crawl on my hands and knees, and this hand, that hand, this knee, and I put this knee down, I fell flat on my face. There wasn't a leg there anymore. It was blown off about halfway between the knee and the hip.
Our section leader, Bobby Devins, Sergeant Devins, he told us all to pull back out of where we were, and we fell back into like a little stream bed, a little bank there, and we lined up on that. And he checked the whole perimeter to make sure everybody was situated, and then that's where we had our stand right there. That was the end of the line, that riverbank. When Bob put us into that other position, Jinx hit us, and he got hit in the back of the head with a burp gun. And remember, we did the best we could when we had a bad head wound, and of course we didn't have nothing to work with. He died in Jack Danaher's arms. Les gave up his sleeping bag to put Bob in it, and we put him on the side of the road. And we figured, well, Graves registration will find it, but it was such a mess that everything went crazy.
I remember we expended all our grenades, we rolled them all down, and we were, the mortars were going off from behind us, you know, and it was at night, we couldn't get air support. We lost a lot of equipment. But we did hold.
And there must have been 5 or 6 machine guns outside of our aid station. And at night, we'd hear bugles go off, and they would say, "Here they come." And the machine guns would go off, and every 8th bullet, I think, was a tracer bullet. And it was like the 4th of July. It was an eerie beauty to see these streams of light going out as they were firing in crisscross fire. And in the morning, there would be 5 deep in front of our machine gun nests. No exaggeration.
As you can see, they say the war is hell, and Korea was a special kind of hell, especially that 10% that have to face the enemy eyeball to eyeball. A real tough conflict, not only against a very tough enemy, but the weather in Korea was unbelievably cold and miserable. And could you tell us now, we want the people to be able to order this film if they want. Do you want to convey to us some of the ways that they can do that? And
Absolutely. Again, the film's available at frozenchosin.com, CHOSIN. It will also be available at Marine Corps PXs if you live by a base. And it's on a limited release in theaters right now in New York and LA. And I just want to say that it's been an honor to work on the film, just because these gentlemen are my personal heroes as a Marine, and they created the legacy that I've had to uphold during my service. So it meant a lot to be a part of the project. Also, something you'll notice if you get the DVD and look at the packaging, there's sort of a story behind it. If you look at the front here, we have it's a very iconic image from a famous war photographer named Douglas Duncan, David Douglas Duncan, and it's the Marines fighting at Chosin. So you start out with the battle on the front cover. Inside of the DVD, after you take the sleeve off, is a famous painting by Marine artist Charles Waterhouse, who gave us permission to use this painting. It's a very iconic one from the Chosin battle, and it's of the Marines actually making their way out of the reservoir. As you look on the inside of the DVD, there is a photograph of the refugees that they saved. And this photograph was taken by a gentleman named Robert Lunny, who was in the Merchant Marine, and his ship, the Meredith Victory, saved 14,000 of the 98,000 refugees. And he took this photo and allowed us to use it for the project. And last but not least, there's a small piece of a map here. We actually were able to find the maps used by the 1st Marine Division to brief their intelligence every day in 1950. So that is an actual map we found in the archives from the 1st Marine Division that was used at Chosin. So the packaging itself is a bit of a collector's item and tells the story of Chosin. And finally, you'll notice on the back icons at the bottom for the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund and the Wounded Warrior Project. And a portion of all of our DVD sales are given to those organizations. And we thought it was fitting because when we came home, myself and Brian, there were veterans waiting for us when we got off the bus. Vietnam veterans, Korean War veterans, and World War II guys. They were there to welcome us home and tell us what job well done. And many of those men still go to the hospitals and meet with our soldiers, sailors, and Marines and airmen who are coming home wounded. And they continue to give and they continue to serve our country and our service members. So we wanted to donate to those organizations. Years from now, when this thing is still sitting on store shelves and I'm gone and these men are gone, their story is still giving back to that generation of veterans. So then that's why we chose to donate to those great organizations.
Well, I was in the United States Army Security Agency, and the Army was also in Korea and served with distinction. But one of the stories, not only Incheon, but I'm not a Marine, but I've always admired the Marines that basically we had won the war, and we went up to the Chosan Reservoir, which is the border with China, and about 500,000 Chinese communist troops came in, and it was a chaotic period. And I've always admired the fact that the Marines fought their way for, I believe it was 60 miles to the coast. They took their wounded and their dead with them. The temperature was below zero, and the communists were firing down on them all the way. So I have great admiration for what the Marines did in Korea, but the Army was also there, the Air Force was also there, and the Navy was also there. And it was all of their efforts that led to freeing and keeping South Korea free. And I wanted to say, this is, you're watching San Francisco Veterans Report. It's a public service project of American Legion, C.C. Thomas, Post 244, and I'm the Commander, Wallace Levin. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can see by those interviews of these troops that were at Chosan, the suffering that they went through. We had been in the war a year. We had the war won. We went up to the Chinese border, and the troops were supposed to be home by Christmas. And the next thing they know, a victory was turned into a continuing war when the Chinese communists came in with 500,000 troops. And the great thing about the Marines, they didn't surrender, they didn't retreat. They fought their way to the coast to be evacuated in a similar thing to Dunkirk in World War II. They've had to fight the weather, which was below zero, and they had to take fire from 500,000 Chinese communists. And one of the great things is they brought their wounded and dead out with them. A really historic effort. And this was one of the reasons that the Korean War was a victory. And this year is the 60th anniversary of the start of the Korean War. And next we're going to see a film of gratitude produced by the South Korean government, conveying their appreciation to the American effort, the 54,000 Americans that died worldwide during the Korean War. And this is the Korean government's thank you to America.
"60 years ago, you came to an unknown land to preserve freedom and peace. We still remember your gallantry and sacrifice. The unexpected war put everything into chaos, and we had to put our lives on the line to protect the future of our nation. Then, you gave a warm helping hand to us in times of hardship and despair. It's still vivid in my memory that you came to help us in the name of friendship. When our country's peace was at stake, you came running into danger that might separate you from your loved ones for good. In a country you never heard of, despite challenging weather and fear of war, you devoted yourself to defend our freedom and the Republic of Korea. Do you remember the time we spent together? Even though we didn't speak the same language, we were all of one mind. We fought days and nights in severe cold, enduring injuries. We shed tears for the death of our innocent fellow soldiers. Your valor and sacrifice served as a foundation for us to regain hope. In the poorest country that was expected to take more than 100 years to rise from the ashes of war, we exerted every effort to recover from the war. With the sweat we shed, we began to make a history of a miracle amid the ruins of war. 60 years after the war, today, Korea emerged as the 10th largest economic power in the world and became the chair of the G20, as well as a proud member of the United Nations. Now, Korea is leaping towards a better future. Korea became the first country that transformed itself from an aid recipient to a donor and is reaching out to those in need across the globe. We will always remember your noble sacrifice and warm heart that offered help in the name of friendship. My dearest friend, you will always be our hero.